Drew Kane's exit from General Hospital has caused waves in the soap opera community, with reactions ranging from exuberant relief to wary skepticism. Drew, played by Cameron Matheson, has long been a divisive figure in Port Charles, with his path veering from heroic to diabolical with such constancy that even the most devoted fans have become dissatisfied. His leave, punctuated with the dramatic flourish typical of daytime television, begs the question, are we finally rid of one of General Hospital's most despised villains, or is this just a stop in his reign of terror? Because soap operas are infamous for their resurrections and redemptions, the statement R.I.P. Drew feels both cathartic and premature. To understand why Drew's departure feels like a watershed event for the program, we must first examine his journey, his imprint on the canvas, and what his absence may signify for the future of General Hospital. Drew's arrival to General Hospital was fraught with the kind of complicated background that only a soap opera could provide. Drew's identity was originally created as a recasting of Jason Morgan, and it was a convoluted web of memory exchanges, mistaken identities, and corporate intrigues. When it was revealed that he was Jason's twin, separated at birth and exposed to a lifetime of deception, the foundation was created for a compelling character with grit and heart. Drew initially held the weight of a tragic hero. He was a guy pulled from his history, forced to recreate his life in a community where everyone seemed to know more about him than he did himself. His infatuation with Sam McCall, his Navy SEAL experience, and his quiet resolve to carve out a position in Port Charles all suggested a figure on the verge of greatness. Fans were drawn to his tenacity, commitment to those he loved, and refusal to be defined by the actions of others. However, sometime along the line, Drew's path took a sudden turn into darker land. The traits that had once made him a fan favorite, his moral compass, his understated strength, began to disintegrate, replaced with a self-serving streak that alienated even his staunchest supporters. The shift was gradual, marked by questionable decisions and an increasing fixation with power. His time at Aurora Media, which could have been a springboard for his salvation, instead became a stage for his demise into arrogance. Drew's ambition, once a sympathetic need to prove himself, has evolved into a vicious pursuit of power, often at the price of those closest to him. His relationships, particularly with Sam and Carly, weakened as he emphasized his own interests above their trust. The man who formerly served as a counterbalance to Jason's austere seriousness evolved into a caricature of misguided ambition, a villain whose actions lacked the depth that makes soap opera adversaries so interesting. For many admirers, Drew's increasingly aggressive behavior marked a watershed moment. His betrayal of Sam, deceitful commercial practices, and readiness to breach ethical lines portrayed him as a figure who had lost his way. Unlike General Hospital's finest villains, Helena Cassadine, Victor Cassadine, and even Sonny Corinthos in his darker moments, Drew's villainy lacked the charisma and depth that made a bad man compelling. Helena's plans were operatic, and her cruelty was infused with a diabolical charm that elevated her to legendary status. Sonny's moral uncertainty, stemming from his devotion to his family and his struggles with mental illness, gave his acts tragic significance. Drew, on the other hand, came out as petty on numerous occasions. His disputes seemed motivated by ego rather than passion, and his betrayals were more opportunistic than deliberate. Fans began to perceive him not as a mastermind, but as a man who became a villain by a succession of stupid decisions, each of which eroded his likability. The audience was frustrated with Drew not only because of his behavior, but also because of squandered opportunities. Soap operas thrive on redemption storylines, and Drew's narrative seemed ideal for one. His past as a victim of memory manipulation should have been investigated more thoroughly, providing a psychiatric perspective on his descent. Instead, the show played on his darkest instincts, transforming him into a one-dimensional antagonist. His feuds with characters like as Nina and Michael, while dramatic, frequently felt manufactured, as if the authors were forcing conflict rather than allowing it to evolve naturally. The audience wanted Drew to confront his past and fight to restore the compassion he had lost. Instead, they got a guy that seemed to enjoy his own demise, which left many viewers disinterested. The subject of whether Drew was General Hospital's nastiest bad guy is disputed. The program has a long history of villains, ranging from the wicked to the sympathetic, and Drew's nastiness falls short of the best. Characters like as Helena and Faison were motivated by a larger-than-life malevolence, with their actions influenced by a clear, albeit perverted, vision. Drew's villainy, on the other hand, frequently lacked direction. His plots lacked the grandeur of a Cassadine plot, and his motivations, power, vengeance, validation, were too commonplace to make an indelible impression. For many supporters, his nastiness was marked not by unforgettable crimes, but by a constant irritation, a sense that he was squandering his talent with each wrong decision. He wasn't evil in the sense of a traditional soap villain, he was aggravating, a figure who could have been so much more. Drew's exit, then, feels like a relief, not only for the folks he tormented, but also for the audience, who had grown tired of his presence. The circumstances surrounding his departure, which are buried in the melodrama that General Hospital excels at, have aroused conjecture as to whether this truly marks the end. Soap operas are based on the idea that no one ever truly dies, and Drew's history of reinvention makes his death feel less than definitive. The program has a pattern of reintroducing people, typically with a new face or a new goal, and Drew's tangled backstory makes him an ideal candidate for a comeback. For the time being, however, his absence provides an opportunity to refocus attention on other characters and storylines that have been overshadowed by his antics. What will Drew's departure imply for General Hospital? In the short term, it provides opportunities for other characters to shine. Sam, free of the weight of their strained relationship, can experiment with different dynamics, such as reconnecting with her McCall roots or establishing a path as a single mother. Carly, who clashed with Drew over business and personal betrayals, can now focus on her role as the show's feisty matriarch. The corporate intrigue at Aurora Media, which frequently served as a backdrop for Drew's ego, can either fade into the background or be recreated with new faces. More broadly, Drew's departure raises issues about the show's direction. Drew's arc, promising at first, then divisive, emphasizes the difficulties of integrating a novice into a renowned canvas. Drew's departure allows fans to think on what makes a soap opera character endure. The best characters, whether heroes or villains, have a spark that keeps viewers interested, even if they dislike them. Drew, despite his talent, never quite found that spark. His early days as a wounded hero gave way to a persona that felt distant from his origins, a man whose actions did not match the audience's expectations. His departure, whether permanent or temporary, provides an opportunity for General Hospital to learn from his storyline. The show succeeds when it explores its characters' emotional complexity, allowing them to develop, fall, and redeem themselves. Drew's inability to connect was more than simply a character flaw, it was also a failure to maximize on the story's enormous possibilities. As the dust settles on Drew's departure, the question remains, are we genuinely saying goodbye? For some supporters, the response is an emphatic yes. They're eager to move on, to view Port Charles without the cloud of Drew's mistakes. Others remain hopeful that the figure may return, redesigned with the depth and subtlety he lacked. Soap operas are essentially about second chances, and Drew's story feels unfinished. Whether he returns as a redeemed hero, a deeper villain, or something else entirely, his departure marks a watershed moment. General Hospital has an opportunity to refocus and produce stories that reflect the essence of Port Charles at its best. For the time being, however, the community is free of Drew Kane, which feels like a fresh start. Drew's legacy on General Hospital is a cautionary story about the perils of losing sight of a character's core. He began as a man with an intriguing narrative, a twin stripped of his identity and struggling to find his place. But somewhere along the process, that tale was lost, and fans were left with a version of Drew that felt unfamiliar. His spectacular and acrimonious exit brings an end to a chapter that never fully delivered on its promise. As the show progresses, it has the opportunity to learn from Drew's mistakes and create people and stories that speak to the heart of what makes General Hospital a cultural institution. Whether Drew's RIP is a final farewell or a temporary goodbye, it's a time to celebrate the end of an era while also looking forward to what comes next. Scout sat silently in the corner of the Quartermain living room, her small fists clutched tightly around the edges of a folded photograph she had stolen from Drew's desk. Her youthful face was pale, and while her look suggested innocence, her wide eyes showed something far more serious, a burden she had been carrying for days. Dante spotted it the instant he entered the room. He had come to check on everyone after the chaos of the previous week, when Drew's near-fatal shooting had rocked the family to its core. Dante was there not only as a detective, but also as a buddy. Drew had been his buddy in more ways than one, and now he lay in a hospital bed, his life hanging by a thread as the shooter remained at large. But something about Scout's mood drew Dante's attention away from the rest of the room. She hadn't talked much since the incident, but tonight her silence was significant. He crouched in front of her, lowering his voice slightly to avoid startling her. "Hey, kiddo," Dante whispered quietly, placing one hand on his knee. "Are you doing okay?" Scout paused, her little shoulders rising and falling with an unsteady breath. Her gaze flickered to the snapshot in her palm, then back to Dante's troubled eyes. "I know who hurt Daddy," she muttered so gently that Dante almost missed it. The words sounded like a thunderclap. Dante's breath caught in his chest, but he forced himself to remain cool. He did not want to scare her away. "You do?" he inquired gently, getting in slightly closer. "Scout, please tell me what you know. This is not your fault, okay? None of this is your fault." She nodded shakily, tears collecting at the corners of her eyes. "I didn't mean to find out," she admitted, her voice shaking. "I was at Daddy's office the night before it happened. I overheard him conversing on the phone. He had no idea I was there." Dante remained completely motionless, giving her enough time to continue. He could sense the stress emanating from her little physique. Scout unfolded the snapshot in her hand and extended it to Dante. It wasn't just any snapshot, it was a security still printed from one of Quartermain's cameras, depicting a figure standing near the property's side gate. The image was fuzzy but clear enough to recognize. "That's him," Scout murmured, her mouth twitching. "That's the man I saw in the yard the night Daddy was hurt." Dante's heart hammered as he glanced at the picture. He knew the man quickly, and the word that came to mind sent a shock through him. It was not a faceless stranger. It was not a random attack. It was someone a lot closer to Drew than anyone had anticipated. "Scout," Dante whispered deliberately, his voice firm yet low. "Are you 100% certain this is who you saw?" She nodded firmly this time, wiping away tears with the back of her hand. "I see him, Dante. He was conversing on the phone when he mentioned Daddy's name. I overheard him. I assumed he was there to visit Daddy, but then he said he was there to make things right. I didn't understand what he meant. But then Daddy was shot." Dante took a hesitant breath, the weight of her admission seeping deeper into his chest. He didn't want to push her any more, but his instincts as a detective and father warned him they were running out of time. Whoever pulled the trigger had not finished what they began, and Scout was now a direct witness. "Okay," Dante replied gently, placing a soothing hand on her petite shoulder. "You did the right thing by informing me, Scout. I pledge to keep you secure. Nobody's going to hurt you. And we'll sort it out together." Scout paused again, her lower lip twitching. "Dante, if I tell you his name, will you arrest him?" Dante stopped, knowing there was no simple solution. "I cannot promise what will happen," he added quietly. "But I promise you this, no one will ever hurt you or your father again." Scout gulped hard before coming closer and whispering the name into his ear. Dante froze. The words felt like a knife in his chest, and his mind raced with the ramifications. Scout had just said a name that he did not expect. It wasn't Drew's former nemesis in Afghanistan, nor was it an Aurora media rival. It was someone from Port Charles, whose betrayal would reverberate throughout the community. Dante slowly rose up, his jaw tightening as he comprehended what he just heard. He looked at the photograph again, confirming what Scout had told him, and his pulse sped. "All right," he finally answered, trying his voice to be even. "I need you to stay here, Scout. Please don't tell anyone else about this yet. Not your mother, not anyone." "But why?" she inquired, her voice small and scared. "Because," Dante replied, lowering again to meet her eyes, "the person who did this is dangerous. And until we have proof, we must remain prudent. If they know you saw them, they might try to hurt you as well." Scout's eyes widened in dread, and Dante quickly regretted his bluntness. He softened his tone and moved a stray strand of hair away from her face. "I vow that I will not let anything happen to you. But we need to be careful right now, okay?" She nodded, her tiny hands trembling as she gripped the photo closer. By the time Dante left the Quartermain mansion, his entire body was pumped with adrenaline. He got in his car, slammed the door shut, and grasped the steering wheel, his knuckles becoming white. Scout gave him a name, and it changed everything. It wasn't just about Drew anymore. This was about a series of secrets, lies, and betrayals that went much deeper than anyone had anticipated. As he drove toward the PCPD, Dante replayed Scout's remarks in his head, attempting to figure out what caused the shooting. The man in the photo had motivation, opportunity, and, due to Scout's eyewitness statement, a direct connection to the crime. But confronting him would not be easy. This was not someone you could just bring in for interrogation without causing a ripple effect throughout the town. Dante also realized he couldn't share what he'd learned with everyone just yet. Sam would want to know, of course, Scout was her kid, after all, but confronting the gunman before they had hard evidence could endanger both her and Scout. He couldn't take that chance. Drew remained unconscious in the hospital, with a critical but stable condition. Sam sat beside his bedside, clutching his hand tightly, as Curtis walked the hallway, his irritation growing with each passing hour. Nobody noticed when Dante came, his face tense and unreadable. He checked in with the doctors, but his focus was not on Drew's medical records, but on the shocking reality Scout had placed in his lap. He knew he needed to act quickly. The shooter could discover Scout had spotted him. And if that happens, she will be the next target. Dante slipped silently out of the hospital and made his way to the PCPD's evidence department, where the photograph Scout had provided him would be immediately analyzed. The team needed to cross-reference the timestamp on the security camera, verify the image's legitimacy, and begin creating a timeline. Every second counted now. But as Dante stood there, staring at the grainy figure frozen in the image, he couldn't resist the nagging suspicion that this was much deeper than Scout comprehended. Whoever it was, they were not operating alone. Someone else had planned this. Someone powerful. Someone with a particular agenda. In that moment, Dante made a silent vow, no matter how bad the situation became, he would not let the person who shot Drew walk away. More significantly, he refused to let Scout, or anybody else, become collateral damage in a game that was far from done. As night fell on Port Charles, the city appeared quieter than usual, but Dante knew better. The shooter was watching, waiting for the next move. Scout provided Dante with a name and a specific target. The battle for the truth had just begun. Dante sat alone in his PCPD office, staring at the security photo Scout had supplied to him. The hazy image etched into his memory, the silhouette of the shooter locked in time. The name Scout had murmured into his ear rang like a rhythm, burrowing deeper into his chest with every repetition. He had knew this individual. I actually trusted them. And the treachery made the situation even more hazardous. His phone buzzed on the desk, breaking him out of his reverie. Sam had sent a message, Scout has asked for you. She's terrified. Dante's jaw clenched as he read it. He knew telling Sam would complicate everything, but he couldn't keep Scout in the dark. She was already carrying too much for her age. He swiftly replied back, "Keep her close. Don't let her out of sight. I'll explain soon." He sat back in his chair and ran his palm over his face. There was no room for errors. Whoever shot Drew was not only irresponsible, but also calculated. They'd planned it. And Scout, whether she realized it or not, had placed herself squarely in their sights the moment she noticed them. Dante grabbed his jacket and proceeded to the evidence room, where the tech crew had already began reviewing the film. Officer Chase waited for him, arms folded, his typically calm look replaced with concern. "Do you have anything?" Chase inquired as Dante entered. "Maybe," Dante answered cautiously, dropping his voice. "However, I need you to keep this between us for now. No one else has heard about this, yet." Chase grimaced but nodded. "Understood. What are we looking at?" Dante handed him the photograph. "Scout says this is the guy she saw near the Quartermain gate the night Drew was shot." Chase strained his eyes as he examined the photograph. This looks like..." He paused, looking up at Dante with surprise. "No way. Are you certain about this?" "She was certain," Dante replied bitterly. "Frankly, so am I." Chase gave a low whistle and shook his head. "If this is true, Dante, it changes everything." "Yeah," Dante murmured as his jaw tightened. "It does." The tech team determined that the image's timestamp precisely matched the night of the incident. No tampering or falsification. The figure was exactly where Scout had indicated they were. Dante now had a motive, an opportunity, and a witness, but no confession. And until he did, the entire case hung on a thread. Back at the Quartermain estate, Scout curled up on the couch, embracing her knees while Sam attempted to console her. Michael had also stopped by, but his presence simply heightened the tension. He demanded answers, and he was not known for being patient when his family was threatened. "Sam," Michael replied quietly, staring at Scout, "I understand you're trying to protect her, but we can't disregard what she may know. If she saw or heard something..." "She's just a kid, Michael," Sam replied, her voice tense. "I'm not going to drag her through an interrogation right now." "I'm not saying we grill her," Michael added quietly, lowering his tone. "Whoever did this to Drew is still out there. And if they know Scout saw them, they don't know," Sam interrupted, shaking her head. "And they won't, not if Dante handles this properly." Michael paused but eventually moved back, his frustration seething just beyond the surface. He adored his family, but he also understood Port Charles, secrets seldom remained hidden for long. Meanwhile, Dante was outside the Quartermain home, looking from across the street. He wasn't ready to confront anyone yet. He was there to ensure Scout's safety. But as he stood in the shadows, a black SUV passed slowly by, its tinted windows masking the driver. Dante's instincts went on high alert right away. He remembered the plate number as the car rounded the curve and vanished into the night. Something informed him this was no coincidence. The next morning, Dante made his move. He drove to Metro Court, knowing exactly where the person Scout had named would be. His heart beat with each step he took toward the table by the window, where the suspect was sipping coffee as if nothing had happened. "Do you mind if I sit?" Dante questioned coolly, sliding into his seat before anyone could respond. The man froze, evidently frightened, but soon recovered and forced a cool grin. "I'm Detective Falconeri. What do I attribute the joy to?" Dante leaned forward, his voice low and harsh. "We both understand why I am here. You were at the Quartermain property the night Drew was shot. The man's demeanor remained unchanged, but Dante noticed a small quiver in his jaw, indicating he was rattled. That is ludicrous. I wasn't anywhere near the Quartermaines. Dante went into his jacket and drew out the photograph, sliding it onto the table. Then maybe you'd like to explain this. For the first time, the suspect's composure broke. His hand hesitated mid-reach for his cup, and his breath hitched slightly. Dante did not miss it. You've got this all wrong, the man responded swiftly, leaning back in his seat. I had nothing to do with what happened to Drew. Then why were you there? Dante pressed, his voice like steel. The quiet between them was oppressive and crushing. Finally, the man leaned forward and lowered his voice, allowing only Dante to hear. You do not comprehend. This isn't only about Drew. Dante's jaw hardened as he said, if I talk, people will die. You've already almost killed someone. If there is more to come, I need to know immediately. Who's in charge here? The man's gaze raced across the room before he leaned back and shook his head. I cannot. Not here. Dante's patience was becoming thin, but he understood that pushing too much would only make matters worse. Instead, he stood slowly, towering above the table. You've got 24 hours, he stated bluntly. Either you come to me with the truth, or I come for you myself. As Dante walked away, he felt the weight of the moment on his shoulders. The case's links tightened, dragging him further into a labyrinth of secrets in which every incorrect step may cost another life. That night, Dante went back to the hospital to check on Drew. The doctors had finally removed him from the ventilator, and while he was still feeble, his eyelids fluttered open as Dante entered the room. Hey, Dante replied softly, putting up a chair. Don't try to say too much. Drew's lips parted, and his voice was gruff and broken. Scout, is she okay? She's okay, Dante comforted him, resting his hand on his arm. She is safe. I promise. Drew closed his eyes briefly in relief, but then his brow furrowed, his voice weak as he whispered, It wasn't random, Dante. He knew where to find me. Dante said gently, grasping his hand. And I know who it was. Drew's eyes opened wide, astonishment and dread lighting across his face. Then you know. It's bigger than me. Don't let them touch Scout. Promise me. I promise, Dante responded firmly, his voice bearing the weight of a vow he would not breach. Drew's admonition lingered in Dante's mind as he exited the hospital. The shooting was more than just a personal vendetta. It was part of something broader, more dangerous, that extended beyond Drew, the Quartermaines, and even Port Charles. Scout had unwittingly unlocked the first door in a long series of secrets. But beyond that door was a truth so combustible that it could split families and endanger everyone they cared about. Dante knew one thing for certain, the following 24 hours would change everything. Dante hardly slept that night. Scout's shaking voice repeated the shooter's name in his mind every time he closed his eyes. It wasn't simply surprising, it was hazardous. Whoever was behind this was not working alone, and the further Dante delved, the more convoluted the web became. By daybreak, his intuition warned him that time was running short. He went straight to the PCPD and accessed security feeds, phone logs, and car tracking reports. The black SUV he'd spotted the night before had returned registered under a shell business, a bogus firm linked to offshore accounts. That wasn't a coincidence. Scout suspected that the person he recognized could be a pawn rather than the king, as someone strong was manipulating the situation. As he was piecing together the history, Dante received a call from Sam. Her voice was tense with worry. Dante, Scout has been asking questions. She wants to know if she's in trouble for saying what she saw. Dante soothed her right away. But listen to me, Sam, you need to keep her close. Don't let her out of sight. Not until I finish this. Sam paused. You're scaring me. I wish I didn't have to, he said. But it's not over. Not by a long stretch. Meanwhile, across town at the Metro Court, the man Scout had spotted was sitting at a quiet corner booth, feverishly speaking into his phone. His palms trembled as he murmured, "She noticed me. The kid noticed me. If Dante joins the dots, it's over." A cold voice on the other end replied, "You know what to do. Clean it up. No loose ends." He swallowed hard, looking around to make sure no one was listening. I did not sign up for this. I thought we were just sending a message, not. He hesitated and lowered his voice more. I'm not killing Drew. You've already gone too far, the voice said angrily. Handle it. Or someone else will handle you. The phone went dead, leaving the man pallid and shivering. He realized then that he was more than simply a suspicion, he was also a target. Drew's condition improved significantly once he returned to the hospital, but he remained weak and in agony. When Dante returned, Drew motioned for him to approach. You're going after him, Drew said, his voice low and tight. I don't have a choice, Dante explained calmly. Scout provided me enough to connect the dots, but it's bigger than we expected. This wasn't only about you. Drew gritted his teeth and gripped the bedsheet. Do you think it's related to Aurora? Or perhaps to Sunny? Dante shook his head slowly. I have not ruled anyone out yet. Someone intended to silence you. And they're willing to hurt anyone to get it done. Drew's stare hardened for a minute, the fire in his eyes returning despite his wounded. Then you'd better stop them before they come after Scout. Dante placed a hand on his shoulder, vowing, I won't let anything happen to her. As Dante walked into the hallway, his phone buzzed with an encrypted message from an unknown number, back off. Or Scout will be next. The words froze Dante in place, his blood running cold. This was more than just a warning, it was a declaration of war. He instantly surveyed the area, his senses acute, but whomever transmitted the message was observing from a distance he could not see. He instantly called Chase. We have a greater problem. They know Scout spoke. Get a unit outside the Quartermain estate and quadruple the hospital's security. Chase's voice tightened on the other end. No one gets near Scout or Drew without passing through me first. Do you believe they'll actually move? Dante did not hesitate. I know they will. Dante hung up, feeling the strain build up. The pieces were moving too quickly. The gunman was terrified, the mastermind was tightening their grip, and Scout was stuck in the center of everything. There was no turning back. The next move was not going to be to collect evidence. It was going to be about staying safe, surviving, and preventing the next onslaught. But Dante understood one thing with absolute certainty, whoever ordered Drew's shooting was not done yet. The next target may be anyone.